Hey, my name is Lucas Hayes. I'm 28, and I've been working as a private driver for the big shots at Apex Technologies in New York City for the past 3 years. I'm the invisible guy, the one who blends into the background, ferrying executives from meetings to airports, always on call but never really noticed. My life is a routine of long hours behind the wheel, grabbing cold sandwiches from gas stations and crashing in a cramped studio apartment on the outskirts of Queens. It's affordable, but it feels like a holding cell. I spend my downtime listening to old true crime podcasts or flipping through dog-eared thriller novels, wondering why my days slip away without leaving a mark. Sometimes I catch myself staring at the city skyline from my window, thinking, is this all there is? That night was supposed to be just another shift. Apex was throwing a lavish 10-year anniversary gala at the Hilton in Midtown. I wasn't invited, of course. My role was to park in the lot, sip lukewarm coffee from a thermos, and wait for the call to shuttle someone home. Snow was falling lightly outside, dusting the hoods of the luxury cars around me. I huddled in my black sedan, the heater humming softly, and pulled out my book, a worn copy of a detective story I'd been nursing for weeks. The plot was twisting, but my mind wandered. Why does my life feel so damn bland? I muttered to myself, checking my phone for the time. It was pushing 11 p.m. Just as I was about to doze off, there was a sharp knock on the window. I jolted upright and rolled it down. It was Lisa, the personal assistant to our CEO, Natalie Cross. Her face was flushed, eyes wide with panic under the parking lot lights. "Lucas, thank God you're here," she said, her breath fogging in the cold air. "Natalie's had too much to drink. She's refusing to let anyone else help her. She keeps asking for you. Can you come up and get her home? Please?" I froze for a second. Natalie Cross? The ice queen of the tech world, the woman who'd built Apex into a billion-dollar empire with her sharp mind and unyielding drive? In all the times I'd driven her, maybe a dozen or so, she'd barely spoken more than 5 words to me at a time. Airport? Home. Thank you. That was it. She was a legend. Mid-40s, always impeccably dressed, with a presence that commanded boardrooms. Why me? A knot of unease twisted in my gut. If something went wrong, if rumors started, my job, hell, my reputation, could be toast. But looking at Lisa's desperate expression, I couldn't say no. "All right, I'm coming," I said, locking the car and following her inside. The lobby was still buzzing with gala stragglers, laughter echoing off the marble floors. Lisa led me to a side lounge where Natalie was slumped in an armchair, surrounded by a few concerned colleagues. She looked stunning even in disarray. Her emerald evening gown hugged her figure, her dark hair cascading loosely over her shoulders instead of the usual tight bun. But her makeup was smudged, mascara trailing down her cheeks like black tears, and her eyes, those piercing blue eyes that could silence a room, were glassy and lost. "Lucas," she murmured when she saw me, her voice slurred but relieved. She reached out a hand and I took it gently, helping her to her feet. Her colleagues stepped back, murmuring thanks as I draped her coat over her shoulders and guided her toward the exit. She leaned on me more than I expected, her perfume, a subtle mix of jasmine and vanilla, wafting up as we walked. Outside, the snow had picked up, swirling under the streetlights. I got her into the back seat, buckling her in carefully before sliding behind the wheel. "Home to Glasshouse Tower, right?" I asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. She nodded weakly, her head resting against the window. "Yes, thank you. I'm sorry to be such a mess." "It's no trouble," I replied, pulling out onto the slick streets. The city lights blurred through the falling snow, and for a while we drove in silence. But then I heard a soft sniffle. In the mirror, I saw her wiping her eyes. "You okay back there?" I asked gently. She laughed bitterly, a sound that didn't match her usual composure. "Do I look okay? God, Lucas, you must think I'm the worst kind of boss, the workaholic who pushes everyone away until she breaks." I kept my eyes on the road, choosing my words carefully. "I think tonight's been tough on you. Everyone has off nights." Her voice cracked. "Off nights? Try off years. Do you know what it's like to build everything from nothing, only to realize you're alone at the top?" I didn't respond right away, but something in her tone pulled at me. I'd seen glimpses of her isolation before, the late-night rides where she'd stare out the window, phone silent in her lap. I get it more than you might think, I said finally. Sometimes strength looks a lot like loneliness. That seemed to break the dam. She started crying in earnest, shoulders shaking. Don't leave me. Not like he did, she whispered, her words tumbling out between sobs. I assumed he was an ex, maybe a husband or partner who'd bailed. I reached back with one hand, offering a pack of tissues from the glove compartment. She took it, her fingers brushing mine briefly. We arrived at Glass House Tower, a sleek skyscraper overlooking the Hudson. I parked in the underground garage and helped her out, supporting her as we took the private elevator to the penthouse on the 40th floor. The doors opened to a sprawling space, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist decor in whites and grays, but it felt empty, like a showpiece rather than a home. She stumbled toward the living room, and I guided her to the sofa. Let me get you some water, I said, heading to the kitchen. I filled a glass, grabbed an aspirin from the cabinet she'd pointed out once before, and returned. She was sitting there, head in her hands. I knelt to remove her heels gently, careful not to overstep. Here, this'll help with the headache tomorrow. As I stood to leave, her hand shot out, gripping my wrist tightly. Her eyes met mine, vulnerable and pleading. Don't go, please. Just for tonight. I hesitated, but the raw pain in her voice won out. Okay, I said softly. I'll stay. She lay back, and I pulled a blanket over her. I sat in a nearby chair, watching her breathing even out until she drifted off. Only then did I move to the guest room down the hall, collapsing onto the bed fully clothed. As I stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the city below, I realized something profound. The strongest people often hide the deepest cracks, and sometimes all they need is someone willing to stay through the night. For the first time in years, I didn't feel quite so invisible. I woke up with a kink in my neck, the kind that comes from sleeping on a too-firm sofa in an unfamiliar place. Sunlight filtered through the massive windows of the penthouse, casting long shadows across the sleek hardwood floors. For a moment, I forgot where I was, my mind foggy from the late night. Then it hit me. Natalie Cross's apartment. The events of the previous evening rushed back. The gala, her tears in the car, her plea for me to stay. I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes and glanced around. The living room was immaculate, all modern lines and neutral tones, but it felt even emptier in the daylight. I could hear faint sounds from the kitchen, clinking cups, the hum of a coffee machine. I stood, folding the blanket I'd used, and patted over quietly. Natalie was already up, moving with a composed efficiency that contrasted sharply with her vulnerability from hours before. She was wearing one of my spare shirts from the emergency kit I kept in the car trunk. Oversized on her, the sleeves rolled up to her elbows. Her hair was tied back neatly and she looked freshly washed, though her eyes were still a bit puffy. Morning, I said softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned, holding 2 mugs, and offered me one with a tentative smile. Coffee? Black, right? I remembered from the times you've driven me. Yeah, thanks. I took it, the warmth seeping into my hands. We stood there awkwardly for a beat, the silence thick with unspoken questions. About last night, she started, her voice steady but guarded. She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms like a shield. Nothing happened, did it? I met her gaze directly, keeping my tone calm and factual. No, I helped you inside, got you settled on the sofa, gave you water and aspirin. You asked me to stay, so I did. Sat by the bed until you fell asleep, then came out here to the couch. That's all. She nodded slowly, processing, her fingers tightening around her mug. Relief flickered in her eyes, but it was mixed with something else, maybe embarrassment or fear. Thank you for being honest, and for everything. It's what anyone would do, I replied, though I knew that wasn't entirely true. Plenty of people would have walked away. She set her coffee down and looked at me intently. Why didn't you leave? Or take advantage? Most men in your position might have. I shrugged, sipping my coffee to buy a second. Because I'm not most men. You were in a bad spot and you needed someone there. Simple as that. Natalie was quiet for a long moment, her expression softening just a fraction. It was like she was seeing me for the first time. Not as the driver, but as a person. You're a good man, Lucas. I appreciate it more than you know. But beneath her words, I sensed a wall going back up, as if letting her guard down last night had scared her. I finished my coffee quickly, sensing it was time to go. I should head out. Let me know if you need a ride later. She walked me to the door, her demeanor back to professional. Thank you again. Drive safe. The elevator ride down felt surreal, like I'd stepped out of someone else's life. Back in my car, I headed home, replaying the night in my head. For once, I didn't feel invisible. I'd helped someone, even if it was just for a few hours. But by afternoon, everything shattered. My phone buzzed nonstop as I microwaved lunch in my tiny kitchen. First, a text from a coworker I barely knew. Dude, you with the boss? Pics are everywhere. Then another. Scandal alert. CEO and her driver? I opened the company Slack channel, my heart sinking. There it was. A blurry photo of me supporting Natalie in the elevator, her head on my shoulder, looking intimate out of context. The thread exploded with comments. Looks like more than a ride home. Power imbalance much? Is this why she's been distant lately? Some were joking, but others were vicious, accusing me of seduction or worse. Panic set in. How had this leaked? Hotel security? A nosy employee? My inbox filled with emails from HR. Report to the office immediately for a meeting. I drove back downtown, my mind racing. In the HR room, two stern-faced managers grilled me. What exactly happened? Was there any inappropriate contact? Have you had prior relations with Ms. Cross? I explained everything truthfully, but their skepticism was palpable. We'll need a written statement. You're suspended pending investigation. Suspended. The word hit like a punch. No pay, no access. My livelihood on hold over a misunderstanding. As I left the building, more messages poured in. Old acquaintances from the company distanced themselves. Heard the rumors, hope it's not true. Strangers online piled on, somehow the photo had jumped to social media. Typical corporate hookup, one tweet read. Driver climbing the ladder the easy way. I slumped in my car, staring at the dashboard. Natalie must be going through hell too. Board meetings, press inquiries, her spotless reputation tarnished. I pictured her alone in that penthouse, facing the fallout. Had my good deed backfired this badly? For the first time, I questioned if kindness was worth the cost in a world quick to judge. As the snow started falling again outside, I felt more isolated than ever, wondering if I'd just ruined both our lives. The days following my suspension blurred into a haze of isolation and self-doubt. I holed up in my apartment, the blinds drawn against the relentless New York winter. My phone was a constant torment, buzzing with anonymous messages that ranged from snide to outright cruel. Opportunist, one called me. How much did she pay you to play hero? Another sneered. I tried responding to a few at first, explaining the truth, but it only fueled the fire. Sure, buddy, keep denying it, came the replies. I stopped bothering. Friends, or what I thought were friends, from the company went silent. No check-ins, no, hey, you okay? Just radio static. Even my barista at the corner coffee shop gave me a sideways glance when I picked up my usual black drip. I paced the small space, replaying every decision from that night. Should I have called HR instead? Left her with Lisa? The what-ifs gnawed at me. My bank account was already dipping low without pay, and job listings online felt like a pipe dream. Who'd hire a guy tangled in a corporate scandal? I even drafted a resignation email, fingers hovering over the send button. But something held me back. Pride? Or the faint hope that truth would win out? Natalie vanished from the radar, too. No word from her, no sightings in the office, gossip channels. For 2 agonizing days, she didn't show up at Apex. Rumors swirled that she'd stepped down, or worse, that the board was forcing her out. I worried about her constantly, picturing her alone in that echoing penthouse, facing the same venom I was, but amplified by her position. Had I dragged her down with me? The guilt was suffocating. I barely ate, surviving on takeout leftovers and endless cups of coffee, staring at the ceiling at night, questioning if being a good guy was just a fool's errand in a world that twisted kindness into scandal. Then, Monday morning hit like a thunderclap. My phone lit up with an all-hands alert from Apex. Emergency company-wide meeting at 9 a.m. Attendance mandatory for active employees. Suspended or not, I dragged myself downtown, slipping into the back of the packed auditorium. The room buzzed with tension, whispers, sidelong glances in my direction. I kept my head down, heart pounding. The board members filed in, faces stern, and then Natalie appeared. She strode onto the stage in a crisp white suit, her posture ramrod straight, chin high. No sign of the broken woman from that night. This was the CEO, the powerhouse. The murmurs died as she gripped the podium. "Good morning," she said, her voice clear and commanding. "We're here because a single photo has poisoned our company culture. A photo taken out of context, twisted into lies. How many of you jumped to conclusions? Assumed the worst without facts?" The room shifted uncomfortably. She paused, scanning the crowd. "Let me ask, have you ever had a bad night? Felt vulnerable? Needed help? Now imagine that moment broadcasted, dissected, and weaponized against you." She nodded to the AV team, and the screen behind her flickered to life. Security footage rolled. Me helping her from the hotel lounge, steadying her in the car, the elevator ride where she leaned on me for support. Then, inside the penthouse, grainy but clear, me guiding her to the sofa, fetching water, aspirin, a blanket. No lingering touches, no closed doors. Just care. The final clip showed me retreating to the guest room, lights out. Nothing more. Gasps rippled through the audience, faces turned red. Some averted their eyes. One woman in the front row covered her mouth. Natalie let the silence hang before speaking again. "This is the truth. Lucas Hayes didn't take advantage. He showed compassion when I needed it most. And for that, he was vilified. We all were quick to judge based on a snapshot. That's not the apex I built." She turned to the board, her tone steel. "I demand a full investigation into who leaked that photo and fueled the rumors. Effective immediately, those responsible will be suspended. We need to root out toxicity, not enable it." The auditorium was pin-drop quiet. A board member nodded reluctantly, murmuring agreement. As the meeting wrapped, apologies trickled in, mumbled sorries from colleagues who'd gossiped, but Natalie wasn't done. She caught my eye from the stage and motioned for me to stay. In a side conference room afterward, just the two of us, she closed the door. Her composure cracked slightly, eyes softening. "Lucas, I owe you more than words. You stayed when no one else would have. And in return, you got dragged through the mud." I shook my head. "You didn't have to do all that. The footage, the speech." "I did," she interrupted firmly. "Because you stood by me, now it's my turn." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a formal letter. Promotion to Head of Culture and Ethics, a new department focused on fostering trust and accountability at Apex. Salary bump, office space, the works. I stared at it, stunned. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll take it," she replied with a small smile. "We need someone like you, someone who leads with integrity, not ambition." Overwhelmed, I nodded. As I turned to go, she stepped forward and pulled me into a brief, genuine hug. It wasn't romantic, just grateful, human. In that moment, I realized she'd fought for me as fiercely as I'd quietly supported her. The storm wasn't over, but for the first time, I didn't feel alone in it. As I left the building, the weight on my shoulders lifted slightly, replaced by a spark of purpose. In the weeks that followed the meeting, Apex transformed in ways I hadn't thought possible. The whispers faded, replaced by a tentative respect. Colleagues who'd avoided me in the halls now stopped to apologize, some with awkward handshakes, others with teary confessions about how they'd jumped on the rumor mill without thinking. "I feel awful," one woman from marketing said, her voice breaking. "I didn't realize how fast things spiral." I accepted them all graciously, but inside, it was a relief to finally breathe without the weight of judgment pressing down. The board's investigation wrapped up quickly, leading to a few quiet terminations and mandatory ethics training for everyone. For the first time, I felt seen, not as the scandal's punchline, but as someone who'd stood firm. My new role as head of culture and ethics kept me busier than ever. I wasn't just a driver anymore, I was building programs to foster trust, anonymous feedback channels, team-building workshops, even a mentorship initiative for junior staff. It gave my days purpose, turning the monotony of my old routine into something meaningful. I'd spend mornings reviewing surveys, afternoons in meetings, and evenings reflecting on how far I'd come. No more cold sandwiches in the car. Now I had an office with a view, though I still preferred my black coffee from the corner spot. Natalie was the catalyst for much of it. She didn't disappear back into her executive bubble after the dust settled. Instead, she sought me out. It started small, a quick email asking for my thoughts on a new policy or a casual invite to grab lunch in the company cafeteria. "Lucas, join me?" she'd say, waving me over with that composed smile. At first, our conversation stayed professional, discussing ways to make Apex feel less cutthroat, more human. But gradually, the barrier softened. One afternoon, about a month in, she knocked on my office door. "Walk with me?" We strolled through Central Park, the spring air crisp, leaves just starting to bud. She opened up in fragments, her strict father, who'd drilled ambition into her from childhood, the early career betrayals that hardened her shell. "I learned young that vulnerability is a liability," she admitted, kicking a pebble along the path. "But that night, you saw me at my lowest and you didn't run." I shared too, haltingly at first. My upbringing in a rundown suburb of Chicago, parents scraping by on factory wages, the dreams I'd shelved for stability. "I always felt like I was on the sidelines," I said, "driving people to their big lives while mine stayed small." She stopped walking, turning to face me. "You're not small, Lucas. You have a quiet strength most people envy." From there, our meetings spilled beyond work. Dinners at unpretentious spots, a hole-in-the-wall Italian place in the village, or a quiet Thai restaurant near her tower. No fanfare, just easy talk over shared plates. She'd laugh at my stories of botched road trips, and I'd listen as she unpacked the toll of her divorce years ago, her ex-husband's infidelity, the way it shattered her trust. "He left when things got real," she said one evening over dim sum. "Promised forever, then bailed at the first sign of my humanity." I nodded, feeling the echo in my own past flings that fizzled because I never let anyone in deep. I've been there too, afraid to lean on anyone, so I end up alone. Our connection grew slowly, like roots taking hold in soil. No rushed confessions, no dramatic gestures, just a steady building of trust. We'd text about nothing, a funny article, a podcast recommendation. One rainy Friday, my phone lit up. "Free for tea? I could use a quiet evening." I showed up at her penthouse with a box of chamomile from my stash, and we sat by the windows, watching the storm lash the city below. She curled up on the sofa, mug in hand, her guard lower than ever. "Do you ever wonder why we clicked that night?" she asked softly. "All the time," I admitted. "Maybe because we both know what it's like to hide behind walls." She reached over, her hand brushing mine. It wasn't a spark of passion, but something deeper, a quiet acknowledgement. We didn't kiss or define anything. We just sat there, the rain drumming a steady rhythm, content in the silence. For me, it was the start of realizing that love, if that's what this was budding into, didn't need fireworks. It needed someone willing to stay, to listen, to see the cracks without judgment. As the weeks turned to months, that bond deepened. We'd escape the city on weekends, drives upstate to hike quiet trails, or lazy afternoons in bookstores. She taught me about resilience in boardrooms. I showed her the joy in simple things like street food or stargazing from a rooftop. Trust became our foundation, built from shared vulnerabilities rather than grand promises. In those moments, I felt my life expanding, no longer confined to the driver's seat. Natalie wasn't just my boss anymore. She was the person who'd shown me that staying could change everything. A year had passed since that fateful night, and looking back, it felt like a lifetime compressed into seasons of change. My role at Apex had solidified into something I was truly proud of. No longer just shuttling people around, I was shaping the company's soul, implementing policies that encouraged openness, running workshops on empathy in the workplace, and even mediating conflicts that once would have festered in silence. The office buzzed with a new energy. People shared ideas without fear, and the once sterile hallways echoed with genuine laughter. I'd traded my driver's seat for a desk with a nameplate, and for the first time, I woke up each morning with purpose, not just a paycheck. Natalie had evolved too. The Ice Queen facade she'd worn like armor had thawed, revealing a leader who led with heart as much as head. She championed initiatives I'd proposed, like flexible mental health days and anonymous support groups. But beyond the boardroom, our connection had deepened into something profound. We didn't broadcast it, no flashy announcements or office memos. Instead, we nurtured it quietly away from prying eyes. It started with those post-work walks and dinners, but grew into shared weekends, escaping to the Hamptons for beach strolls or holing up in her penthouse with takeout and old movies. We'd talk for hours about her fears of failure, my lingering doubts from a rootless past, or sometimes say nothing at all, just holding hands while the city hummed below. There were challenges, of course. The scandal's shadow lingered in subtle ways. A hesitant glance from a board member, a whispered rumor at industry events. Natalie faced pushback from skeptics who questioned her judgment, and I dealt with the occasional anonymous email dredging up the past. But we faced them together. One evening, after a particularly grueling day where she'd defended a budget cut in a heated meeting, she came home exhausted. I drew her a bath, lit candles, and sat on the edge, listening as she vented. "Some days I wonder if it's worth it," she admitted, bubbles swirling around her. I took her hand, tracing circles on her palm. "It is, because you're not fighting alone anymore." She smiled, pulling me closer for a kiss that lingered, soft and reassuring. Our intimacy had unfolded naturally, no rush, no pressure. It was built on trust, the kind forged in vulnerability. We'd spend lazy mornings in bed, her head on my chest, sharing dreams we'd long buried. She confessed her longing for a life beyond the empire she'd built. I admitted my fear of never measuring up. But in those moments we fit. Two people who'd seen each other's scars and chosen to stay anyway. Spring arrived with blooming cherry blossoms in the parks, mirroring the renewal in our lives. One afternoon we wandered through Bryant Park, the air alive with the scent of fresh grass and street vendors. Natalie stopped by a fountain, turning to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Lucas, you're the only person who's ever stayed. Not just that night, but through everything after. Most would have run from the mess." I wrapped my arms around her waist, pulling her close. "And you're the one who showed me staying is worth it. You changed my direction, gave me a reason to believe in more than just getting by." She leaned in, her lips brushing mine. "We're something rare, aren't we? Built from a storm, but stronger for it." We sat on a bench watching people pass by, families laughing, couples hand in hand. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow over the city, I reflected on how far we'd come. Happiness, I realized, wasn't luck or fate. It was the courage to hold on when the world pushed to let go. Our love had grown from that single act of kindness, blossoming into a partnership where trust was the root, and staying was the promise. In the end, we didn't need grand gestures or public validation. We had each other, a quiet, enduring bond that turned isolation into belonging. As we walked home that evening, her hand in mine, I knew, some happinesses are simple, profound, and earned through the quiet bravery of choosing to remain.